You discussed earlier part in your speech about the value of digital art in our age. Now, in Walter Benjamin's famous essay, he said, what was it? The work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, he discusses the loss of artistic value, authenticity, and cultural context, or aura as a result of its mass reproduction and distribution. Now, the question is, in our age, how can digital art maintain the sense of artistic value, truth, and aura, because itself is reliant on these mechanical means for its own creation and accessibility? Now, you can either say it's wankery, but if you do, just humour me for a second and believe that there is a sense of loss. How can private and public groups act to preserve this truth, aura, and value in art and even journalism in the age of information, misinformation, political, cultural conditioning, and ignorance?
Okay, so what's the benefit and the problems with digital art? Well, abundance. It's very hard to produce scarcity, to enforce scarcity. So it's an economic phenomenon. There's not a limited number of paintings available. You can clone them and copy them. So that's basic economics, and it is one of the unfortunate realities of human civilization that those things are abundant. They're like air. I was about to say sun, but those things. That's an interesting example. No one pays too much attention to the sun. I pay a lot of attention to it because it suddenly becomes scarce, and so where it's hard to enforce scarcity, people devalue that which is abundant. So that's where digital art starts. It's devalued because it is abundant. Now the other issue is about constraints. So some of you might have seen a wonderful Lars von Trier film about enforcing 5 constraints on a famous Danish filmmaker. So it is in response to constraints that we must struggle to overcome the constraints. And something like Photoshop, for example, appears to involve no constraints, that you can do anything. And as a result of being able to do anything, there's not the same struggle. And also, it's not as clear that there has been a struggle. Once again, look at why do people really support WikiLeaks and me? Because they can see clearly the degree of our struggle in trying to achieve what we have and trying to preserve ourselves. When it's not clear that there must have been struggle, then it's not clear that one has outdone the other, that one has progressed beyond what was there the year before, or progressed beyond what others have achieved. So I'm not entirely sure what to do about that, creating artificial constraints that one must struggle against. My father's involved in architecture, and I once said to him, there's this thing called AutoCAD, which lays out plans for a building, but you can also, in some extensions, specify the tensile strength of the different materials. And why are modern buildings so boring compared to when we look at medieval stone buildings? Why are they so boring? It's the lack of constraint. When you're building with stone, the constraints of the dynamic of the material force you to be clever, forces you to build arches and so on. But could you modify AutoCAD to apply to give steel the same tensile properties of stone, and therefore force you to make arches out of steel, because otherwise the building won't hold up? I don't know whether these constraints can be deliberately given. There are other environments where they're present. For example, I've been working with a group of Swiss artists, and they're involved in lots of cool hacks. Like they bugged the Vienna Opera House. Sorry, they bugged the Swiss Opera House, the Zurich Opera House, for 3 months, putting telephones around that had an auto-answer mechanism, and then connecting radio stations and people to the opera. So vast funds were spent on the opera as a way of democratizing opera, and there are constant hunts for 3 months. They also sent this package to me with a reprogrammed phone with a GPS tracker in it that takes a photograph every 10 seconds as it moves its way through the postal system and the interesting postal surveillance we have here. That's great. So I think there are ways of finding areas which do have a constraint, such as actually the ability to do that in the Vienna Opera House, sorry, in the Zurich Opera House, the ability to do that, send a package through the postal system. It's not so easy to do in that way. And that constraint gives it something. But then I also would advise strongly on coalescing around, and this is a political matter, but let's look at the data that WikiLeaks has released. There are some visualizations of parts of this, and we're working on more. But these, where the true nature of the world is hidden by complexity, where the secrecy has been smashed through, but now the true nature is hidden by complexity, then it is a role for digital artists to strip away this complexity and find the inner scaffold, to orthogonalize the problem into its component parts. And that's something that anyone can do, well, with a bit of programming, can do right now to, for example, the cable collections that were published. Very important. And similarly, these complexities about this new transnational surveillance state that has been erected. Can that be broken down into its essence, orthogonalized into the individual parts, the buttresses that hold the thing up, and presented that way? That's also something that I think is difficult to achieve. And when it is achieved, it can be recognized because people can compare the complex description and the complex problem with the essence that has been found or proposed to be found in its artistic representation. And that's what makes good art, is that it sustains the curiosity and teaches you something, because a complex phenomenon or a complex analogy about the world has been reduced in such a way that helps you actually see it for what it really is.
Am I looking there?
Yeah, just
okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Ooh. Oh. Okay. Sorry, good evening. I have a question about the WikiLeaks Party. How do you come up with your policies for the party? Is there a hierarchy or community consultation, or what's the process there?
Well, we're a young party, and we're what, 93 days or something away from an election. So the answer is very quickly, but hopefully backgrounded enough in the experience of people like, I can't see you anymore, I'm just going to continue speaking, but hopefully backgrounded in the extensive experience that a number of people have had. My experience, the experiences of, say, Kelly Tranter, a human rights lawyer, or Greg Barnes, who's had extensive experience in various legal civil rights issues. And our campaigners, people from a campaigning background, have been campaigning about a lot of these issues. But so it's just a discussion. And we're still a small enough party where at this stage it's clear what the consensus is. As a result of that discussion, then it's formalized. But as time goes by, what we want to do is roll out new technologies to be able to draw in as many ideas and proposals from our membership base, because a party's leadership, and leadership is important because it's responsible. If there's an error. It's very important to have people responsible for errors. But a party's leadership can only be as good as the ideas that it draws on.
Okay, thank you.
Julian, you've painted a stark picture of the world, but importantly also one with hope as well. And artists are very good at responding, often leading the contemporary culture. So from your keynote tonight, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what work comes out of this in the future. And I hope next time we can actually see you here in person. So please, everyone, give a big thank you to Julian Assange.
If I can just say one last thing. Plato once said that the penalty for not being involved in politics is to be ruled over by your inferiors. Well, of course, Plato was a genius and an elitist, as you can tell from the statement. But that's basically true. Politics is a dirty business. This new surveillance regime is a dirty business. Lots of bad things happening in the world. The penalty for you not dealing with them, for not engaging and fighting for your rights and the rights of others, is that other people will enter the fray. They're already there, and we know how they behave. And those will be your rulers come September 14.
Okay, thank you again. See you later, Julian.
Yeah.